Welcome back. If any of you saw my recent video on Timony's new two-stage triggers for the Remington 700, you also saw a couple of new additions to my home stable. And one of those was the FN PS90. Now, this gun is obviously a very unusual design and shoots an unusual round. As such, it sparked endless debate on the internet over the effectiveness of that round, as well as the usefulness of this gun. And that's what I'd like to discuss, is the pros and cons of owning a PS90 and the 5.7x28mm round. First, just a little bit of history. In the late 80s, NATO put out a specification for a new round, as well as weapons to fire that round, that would replace 9mm subguns and 9mm handguns in certain circumstances. The criteria for that round was that it was to have better range, accuracy, and terminal performance than 9mm, and also be able to penetrate soft body armor. The criteria for the weapons is that they should be small enough to easily get in and out of vehicles, one subgun and one handgun, and that they should both be light and high capacity. Now, two companies answered that call. H&K with the 4.6x30mm round fired out of the H&K MP7, and FN with the 5.7x28mm round fired out of the P90. Now, it's important to note that both companies met all of the required criteria. However, FN with the 5.7x28 was unanimously selected by the board for NATO standardization. However, the German delegate, as well as others, objected to a standardization being made, and the standardization was put on hold indefinitely. Having said that, a good number of countries, for special forces, for counterterrorism, as well as for rear echelon troops, adopted the P90, as well as our own U.S. Secret Service. Now, the first bit of the argument is over the effectiveness of this little guy, the 5.7x28mm round. Now, NATO did find that this round met all the criteria for the competition, which included being longer range, more inherent accuracy, and better terminal performance than 9mm. Now, FN achieved this performance with the SS90 and later the SS190 round. Now, this was a 32 grain projectile doing about 2,400 feet per second out of the 10-inch P90 barrel, and was quite effective. Now, the wound mechanism, like an AR, is tumbling and is dependent on the velocity. The problem is that FN restricts the sale of these rounds to law enforcement and military only, leaving civilians with less desirable choices. For the civilian market, they did the SS195, which is a 27 grain bullet doing about 2,300 out of a 10-inch barrel, and the SS197, which is a 40 grain VMAX doing about 1950 from a 10-inch barrel. And lastly, Federal offers the 40 grain FMJ round, which I haven't chronoed, but it is safe to say it's significantly less velocity than the 197. I would guess it at around 1,800 feet per second out of a 10-inch barrel. Now, this one would be a good varmint round, and either of them are good plinkers, being very low recoil and very flat shooting, but are a little expensive for that use, with a good deal being about 55 cents per round and 40 cents per round respectively. However, all of the civilian rounds offered significantly underperform the military and law enforcement rounds as self-defense options. Now, FN also recently released the SS198 law enforcement and military only round, which is a 27 grain hollow point like the SS195, but it's doing about 2,500 feet per second from a 10-inch barrel. Now, this round again is fast enough to be very effective at that velocity. Now, it's important to note these are not illegal to sell or own. There's no law prohibiting them. It's just that FN restricts them to military and law enforcement only, which can make them very difficult to find and very expensive when you do find them for civilians. Having said that, this SS198LF has been available in decent quantities lately, and at the relatively low price of about 60 cents a round, which certainly isn't cheap, but is about the same for a self-defense round that I pay for my Speer Gold Dot 9mm defensive ammo. Now we can also note that this is marked as green tip, and it will penetrate pistol-rated soft body armor like almost any rifle round, but unlike most pistol rounds. This round, as well as other 5.7x28mm rounds, also has the propensity to break up when going through walls, making it not only this particular round, a very viable option for self-defense, but also an attractive option for home defense. Something else that can confuse the ballistics debate a little bit is the existence of the 5.7 pistol. It's a pistol from FN that fires this same round. Now, that pistol is very viable in its own right and definitely has its advantages and has proven itself effective. However, in terms of terminal ballistics, these rounds are significantly less effective at the lower velocities achieved out of that pistol. As you can imagine, when we're talking about a 27 grain round, the wounding mechanism is very dependent on velocity. And while they're still effective out of the pistol, they are significantly less effective. But one more time, the SS-190 and the SS-198LF are very effective self-defense rounds when fired out of the carbine. So the 5.7 is a viable defense round with the right ammunition. However, that ammunition can be hard to come by and expensive. Even if we can accept the ammo, the debate isn't over, and I guess I can see why. This is a very unusual gun. Just to go through its features, it's a semi-automatic, blowback operated carbine. It holds 50 rounds in the magazine. It's top feeding and bottom ejecting. It has a sliding plastic trigger and ambidextrous controls all the way around. Mag release can be reached from either side. Charging handle can be released from either side, as can the safety. Another very unusual thing that turns some people off is the magazine change, and it is pretty different. What we have is these two tabs right here and right here, and that's actually one piece that goes around the back of the magazine. So you push that back with your forefinger or generally with your thumb to release the magazine, then it comes up and out. And so what people are normally going to do is just grab the magazine like this and jerk that back with their thumb. It's actually reasonably fast, although it's not the drop-free quick change that you get in an AR. To replace the magazine, the bridge actually funnels it in. So we have this upper surface here and the lower surface. You can just jam it in there and slam it down. And it's, again, not as fast as an AR, but it's faster than you'd think it is with a little practice, and you only have to do it once every 50 rounds. The attraction, of course, is the 50-round capacity of the magazines and the compactness of the gun. And it is extremely compact. The whole thing is pretty thin, and with its 10.4-inch barrel of the P90, it is less than 20 inches long. Now in the civilian version, that necessitates not only having the 16-inch barrel, but actually permanently attaching this flash hider to meet the 26-inch overall length requirement, and it is just barely over 26 inches. You can imagine how in the 10.4-inch barrel, with overall length of less than 20 inches, that would be very attractive. Now the detraction, of course, is the very strange ergonomics. We have this really rearward swept grip and the front grip with a hand stop, and awkward magazine release, very small charging handles, and the whole thing looks very awkward. And that's kind of what I thought about it. I thought it's a very interesting gun, but extremely awkward. Until that is, I actually saw one in a store. Out of curiosity, I just asked to try it, and not too long after I had one. Once you pick it up, put it in your hands, you find that these ergonomics really work. Everything falls very, very close to hand, and it tucks in very nicely. Now it does necessitate an elbows in grip. If you hold your elbows out, the grip angle starts to feel awkward. But with your elbows down and in tight, it really works very, very well. And it is just a hoot to shoot. Really fun. Now the trigger is nothing to write home about. It is long and somewhat gritty, but actually has a reasonably clean break. Be okay for short range shooting. It's not something you're going to go do 300-yard shots with, though. Now, if one has gotten past the unusual ergonomics and magazine change, what you're left with is a little carbine that is extremely fun to shoot. This gun is very, very handy. It balances right over the shooting hand regardless of the amount of ammunition you have in it. The CG changes very little. So it sits very, very nicely in the shoulder. And of course this hand is just in front of the CG too. So it's very easy to hold up with either hand. And that makes it just extremely light and pointable. And just a really fun plinker. Now, as fun as this gun is to shoot, owning it definitely presents its challenges. For instance, the ammunition is sometimes hard to find and expensive. And just about anything you want to do to this gun presents big challenges and unusual challenges. Things like mounting an optic, mounting a light, or even just putting a sling on it can be tough. And those are the things I'm going to be demonstrating and talking about with this gun going forward.